this video we'll talk about adding and subtracting vectors. So let's take 2 points, A and B, and consider the vectors going from the origin to these 2 points. We'll call them A and B. Now it is possible to add A to B to obtain a new vector. We do this by following a relatively straightforward method. So step 1. Move along the first vector in the sum from the tail to the head. So we want to start at the origin and move along vector A to point A. Step 2. Place the second vector's tail at the head of the first and move along this vector to its head. So we redraw vector B so that its tail, i.e. the end at which it starts, meets the head, i.e. the end where it finishes, of vector A. Remember, this new red vector is still a representation of vector B because it has the same length and direction as B. So we now move along vector B to this new point, which we've called C. Finally, step 3. The vector that goes from the origin to this point is the sum. So, this green vector, going from O to C, is the sum of our original 2 vectors A and B. So that's how we find A plus B, but what if instead we tried to find B plus A? How would we do this? Well, we'd have to start by moving along vector B from the origin to the point B. We'd then place vector A at the end of vector B and move along it. As you can see, we end up at the same point, C, so we find the same vector as before. Hence we see that A plus B is equal to B plus A. This method for adding vectors is sometimes called the parallelogram method, because it requires us to draw this parallelogram, OACB. This method will work for any 2 line vectors. Simply place one at the end of the other and draw a line from the tail of the first to the head of the second. This is how we find A plus B. Finally, let's look at the other diagonal in this parallelogram, this green vector here. Can we write this in terms of A and B? Well, let's have a look. Using the earlier method, we would obtain this vector if we travelled first along vector A and then along vector B, but crucially, we have to travel along vector B in the opposite direction to vector B's direction, so we're actually travelling along minus B, which we discussed in the previous video. Thus, this green vector is actually A plus minus B, or simply A minus B. Hence, this parallelogram actually gives us A plus B and A minus B. Let's sum up. So we said that if we form this parallelogram from 2 vectors, A and B, we can find this vector, OC, which is equal to A plus B, this vector, BA, which is A minus B, and we also noted that A plus B equals B plus A.